fractions that we've done with everything else. We transformed them. Y'all remember the Simpsons deal where we looked at how the transformations happen. And they are special, so we had to figure out all the discontinuities. The graphs of them have asymptotes, both a horizontal and vertical asymptote, and they sometimes have holes. So we had to do all of that. The one thing that we have not done yet is actually solve them. So that's what we're going to do now.
Yay.
So it starts out easy. Since you already know how to solve these particular rational equations, so try a few. So you should be able to do A. Go ahead and do it real quick. If you can't do it, then we have an issue. I bet you.
I think I did it wrong.
I bet you didn't.
Is it a weird number?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
How about you?
Look at my 8.
Once you do A, go ahead and do B because it's easy also. Okay, so does everybody have an answer on A? Okay, what'd you get?
27/5?
That's it, 27/5 or 27/5.
I told you.
So you just, okay, I'm not even going to tell you because that's what
Cross
it makes.
multiply, right?
So on B, did you do B?
Yes.
And get 21 halves?
Yes.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay, so now C, it's still the same process. The only thing about C is you have to be a little bit careful. Because when you cross multiply, you can't forget that a fraction bar is a grouping symbol. So it's a good habit to go ahead and write this step down. Because otherwise you might forget that you need to distribute. So the 15 has to go to both of the pieces that are not. And the 30 has to go to both of these pieces.
Yes.
Can't you also have a divide all sides by 15?
You could. Sometimes?
Yes.
So is everybody okay?
Yes.
Did I do anything that has blown your mind?
No.
Great. So we're in good shape so far. All right. Question is, what method did we just use?
Cross multiplication.
Cross multiplication. Anybody have any idea why this works?
Because you say so?
That's why, that is it, right? Somebody told you in, what grade did you first cross multiply in?
Physics.
Third or fourth, maybe? Somebody told you, hey, this is what you do, and it works. So that's all you know, right? There's a reason why it works, and we're about to get to that. But the problem with that is, since you learned that back in 3rd and 4th grade, you've been wanting to cross-multiply every fraction you see since then, right? Because it's so easy. So anytime a problem comes up with fractions, everybody always goes, cross-multiply! And it only works across an equal sign. That's the only time cross-multiplication works. So anyway, when you cross-multiply, what you're actually doing, that's actually a shortcut, but what you're really doing when you cross-multiply is you are multiplying both sides by the LCD.
Whoa.
That was a really big space.
I know. Actually, I think they probably wanted me to write it out, but please common denominator, but y'all know what I mean when I write LCD. Okay, so we're going to solve rational equations by multiplying by the LCD, which is just cross multiplying. But here's where it's going to start to look different. If you look at number 1, we can cross multiply that like normal. We're not going to, because I'm going to show you that it's multiplying by the LCD, but you can, and that's the shortcut and it's easy. But when you get to problem number 2, cross multiplying no longer works, because there's more than just an equal sign, or a plus sign. So because it doesn't work on problem number 2, we need to figure out what does work, which is just multiplying by the LCD. So if you'll notice in our instructions, I got these bullets up here. It says to solve a rational equation, the first thing you have to do is state any domain restrictions that would make the denominator 0. The reason is you cannot divide by 0 ever, ever, ever. So when we solve this and we get an answer for x, if that answer makes the denominator 0, then the answer is not an answer. And the only way we're going to know that is if we figure out our restrictions from the very beginning. Restrictions are a really, really big part of pre-cal and college algebra. So you got to make sure you know how to find restrictions. So in this case, it's kind of like we did before. You're going to go piece by piece because every fraction might have a different restriction. It might not, but they might. So if you look at problem number 1, when you look at just the first fraction, 4 over x plus 3, what would cause that denominator to go to 0?
If you
If x was negative 3, right? So x cannot be negative 3 because that would mess up the first fraction. So in my box, I'm going to put x cannot be negative 3. What about your second fraction? 4. So x can't be negative 3 and it can't be 4. Because if it's either of those two numbers, that messes up the whole problem, so this won't work. Alright, so now we're going to do just what we did when we were adding and subtracting rational expressions. We're going to figure out what our LCD is. And this time they even gave us a nice little LCD box. We're going to go fraction by fraction, put what's in the denominator has to be in the LCD box. So my first fraction has an x plus 3 in the LCD box. And my second fraction has x minus 4. So it is just like what we did when we were adding and subtracting. That part's not different. So now we get to the third one, and it says to clear the fractions by multiplying both sides by the LCD. So here's my LCD. I'm going to multiply both the left side of the equation by the LCD and the right side. So on the left side, I'm going to write it down, x plus 3, x minus 4. And on the right side, x plus 3, x minus 4. Now if you look at the left side, what happens on the left-hand side?
it cancels out the x plus 3.
The x plus 3 cancels, and it leaves just 4 times x minus 4. On the right-hand side, the x minus 4's cancel and leave 7 times x plus 3. Which is exactly what you get if you cross multiply. Because that's what cross multiplying is. It's multiplying by the LCD. Okay, so now we're just going to go ahead and finish this. So I have to distribute my 4. And then we're solving for x. So I got x equals negative 37 thirds.
Yeah.
Okay, there's one more thing that you have to do, and it says on the last bullet, solve and check. We solved. Now, this check is not exactly the same kind of check as checking for extraneous roots. You could do that. You could plug it back in and see if it works. It will. But what you really have to check for is you have to make sure that your answer is not one of the restrictions. If it is, then it's not an answer. But it's not this time, so this is our answer. So we're good. Everybody okay so far? So it's not bad. Yes, when you get a problem like that, can you just cross multiply? Of course you can. But when you get a problem like number 2, you can't. So we were just using that first one to kind of show you how this works. And now we'll do it for number 2. So all the steps are exactly the same. Only difference is now this has got more than one term on the left-hand side. It's okay. The process is still the same. Okay, so first thing is to check for restrictions. So on the left-hand side, my very first term, 1 over x. What's the restriction there? 0. X can't be 0. Because if it was, that would make that denominator 0. My second fraction, 13 over 3, has no restriction. Why not?
Because it's x.
There's no x down there. So there's nothing that's going to change that fraction, so that denominator won't ever go to 0. Then my third fraction, all the way on the right-hand side, it's also 0. And we've already written that, so we're good. Alright, so now we're going to go to our LCD box. Piece by piece, we write each thing in the box. My first fraction has an x, so that has to go in the box because there's no way to get rid of it. My second fraction has a 3. I'm going to write it in front just because that looks better. My third fraction also has an x. I've already written that in the box, so you don't have to write it again. So just our LCD is just 3x. Good so far? Alright, so now we're on bullet 3. We're going to clear the fraction by multiplying every term by the LCD. How many terms does this problem have? 3. 2 on the left and 1 on the right. Every term has to be multiplied by the LCD. Go ahead.
Can you cancel out the x?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'm going to write it down under here just so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So my first term, 1 over x, I'm going to multiply by 3x. My second term, which is 13 over 3, I am also going to multiply by 3x. And my third term, I'm going to multiply by 3x. Okay, so on your very first term, what happens? The x's cancel. Just the x's though. So you end up with 3 times 1, or you end up with just 3. In the second term, the 3's cancel, but not the x's.
Oh crap, 3.
So you end up with 13x. And in the last term, the x's cancel, and you end up with 21. And then you just solve. So I got 18/13. You just got to check against your restriction and make sure it's not your restriction. It's not, so you're good. Everybody sort of kind of okay? That one was pretty easy.
I don't like that it's fraction because then if
Because you feel like it's not right. Yeah.
because I think could you not plug it back in on these?
Oh, sure you can. But plugging it back in is going to be a pain in
Yeah,
these
that's what I
because
was
it's a
saying.
fraction inside of a fraction.
That's why I don't like it.
But you can plug it in your calculator.
In my mind, I
Alright,
think
it's like
like
that is
plugging
something.
the fraction back in there it wouldn't work.
Yeah, it will, but it is kind of a pain. But one of the things that happens, and I know it is just kind of the nature of the beast, we train you by using friendly numbers. They call them friendly numbers when y'all are in elementary school. We train you using friendly numbers because it helps you know whether or not your answer is reasonable and all that stuff. But in real life, very rarely are things even. It just doesn't work that way. So life is full of fractions and decimals, and so you kind of got to get used to it and be confident enough in yourself to know the answer can be a fraction and that's okay. But if you wanted to check this, you can play that in your calculator because your calculator will hold a double fraction. And then you can solve it out and see if you get what's on the other side. So, because it's nice that they do that. And you don't have to fix it yourself because they will hold them. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute or two to try number 3 and see how you do.